From today, the 22nd to Thursday, 24th of August, leaders of the Brics countries, the economic grouping of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will be meeting in Johannesburg for their annual Brics summit. The meeting is highly anticipated as it comes as a point of a growing polarization and uncertainty of the on the international stage.
Some say that Brics is becoming a political counterweight to the West, but internal divides and divergent goals among the group on topics like UN reform suggest that it is far from united. There are suggestions that the Johannesburg summit will not yield any concrete results, but it will be watched closely by developing countries looking to join the Brics group. Joining us this morning to discuss the expectations as the summit begins today in South Africa is Patrick L. Kadima. He's a lawyer and public affairs analyst, and he joins us from Johannesburg. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning to you and your viewers.
All right. The BRICS summit commences today. I want you to give us a sense of what is going on there. We do know that Putin will not be attending. That was a subject of controversy for the longest time, but we know for sure now that he will not be attending. What is the picture like? Give us a sense of what's happening and what is expected out of this summit?
Well, Johannesburg is a buzz, and heads of states have been arriving since yesterday or the day before yesterday in Johannesburg for this summit. Yesterday, in fact, late at night, we saw the Chinese president arriving in Johannesburg, and he was, welcomed by the president of South Africa himself. Which showed the importance of the relationship between the two countries. It showed Pretoria's unwavering commitment to Beijing, insofar as we're concerned about whatever is happening in the world. Now, the summit is not as organic as it is supposed to be, in that we have seen that South Africa has extended invitations to several African heads of state, as well as heads of state from the Caribbean and other countries. Now, it puts the picture that the BRICS group of countries is seeking to have more cooperations with many countries, not necessarily accepting all these countries that have been invited to join the bloc, but it seeks to grow its relationship with different countries. Now, yesterday, in fact, or 2 days back, we saw the Moroccan government releasing a statement directed to Pretoria, stating that it had not accepted the invitation to attend the BRICS summit, and that it has never applied to join BRICS. It was a statement that was lashing out mainly the South African government, and it outlined that it had a strained relationship with the South African government, and that the South African government could not speak on its behalf about Morocco's relationship with other BRICS counterparts. So what is expected out of this summit is very simple. We know the food security is on the agenda. We know the issue of expansion is on the agenda. We know India is resisting the expansion of the bloc, while Brazil has said that there needs to be proper implementations or procedures that need to be in place to know how these people will be admitted and what procedure will be followed. But we saw the president of South Africa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, on Sunday addressing the country ahead of this BRICS summit, where he emphasized that it was time for Africa to have a place, at the table, hence the invitation of these more than 30 African heads of states or so that will be landing in the country. So we see that this is not only the 5 countries that are meeting, but there will be, meetings and on the sidelines between heads of states, trying to develop the relationship between them and BRICS.
All right, Mr. Kadima, let's also talk about, another perspective, with regards BRICS, and that is the idea of de-dollarization. Is this a possibility maybe in a long term? It doesn't have to happen in the next couple of months. But of course, I've seen that it's not what BRICS can achieve today, but what they possibly can achieve in the very near future. And those are the concerns, or I think those should be the concerns of the West. So, let's talk about that idea, the de-dollarization idea. How possible is it?
It's not, currently, like you've said, you're correct. It's not feasible. It won't happen today. It won't happen tomorrow. It won't happen next year, but what we know is it's not going to be an easy talk, to have this de-dollarization, happening, in the next few years. There's going to be resistance, the issue of common currency, because that issue of the de-dollarization and the issue of common currency are going hand in hand. It's not going to be an easy way out for the BRICS groups, the BRICS group member states. What I do think is that in the next coming few years, it's going to garner a lot of support, and we just have to wait and see how it's going to develop. And yes, it's a concern for some states, Western states, about the de-dollarization, and I'm sure they will be keenly looking at the developments of what will happen in Johannesburg. But my current sense now is that there will be some sense of resistance, and in fact, if the expansion issue happens, we are certain that some member states will be joining, will also probably try to resist the issue of the of de-dollarization.
Are we also looking to see, more African countries join this? What's your take and your projection for what this summit and what the potential of what BRICS is trying to achieve? What's your projection for what it means for the African continent?
For me, I believe that the Chinese government, will potentially try to take this as an opportunity to extend its influence. I don't think the Chinese government will be against the expansion of the BRICS, especially African countries joining. We are no, we are well aware of its soft power, in terms of how they exert their soft power on the continent, and for them, this is an opportunity to make sure that if the expansion has to happen, it has to happen quickly, because it will give them an opportunity to have dominance on the continent, as a global power that has dominance on the continent. But again, African countries are now seeking to have a level playing field, in which they can be able to trade at a proper level playing field. They are seeking to be on the table. We have heard echoes of African heads of state complaining that they've been having uh, uh, um, unfair, probably competition, trade trades of goods and services have been unfair between Africa and its other partners outside of the continent. But this is an opportunity for Africa and for probably the South to South cooperation between countries. So essentially, if African countries join this bloc, it will open ways for the trading of goods and services. But one thing I would like to highlight is what President Cyril Ramaphosa highlighted in his speech on Sunday, which he tried even to, show how the African Continental Free Trade Area will be important for BRICS, and hence the invitation of these heads of state.
Well, very important discussions. I also want to talk about, the people who say that, they don't trust, the idea of Africa leaning towards Russia and China. That the West, of course, came with its own baggage, but, Russia and China also should not be trusted. What are your thoughts in that regard? Do you agree with that? And of course, mostly because a lot of African countries haven't positioned themselves as having a lot to offer the first place. So, leaning towards these other countries are going to be also because they seek assistance.
Yes, true. There's skepticism. There's skepticism everywhere. African countries joining Western blocs, or, for example, the EU African Summit, or US Africa Summit. There's always skepticism on these in these blocs. I mean, the skepticism now on the issue of African countries leaning towards the East, leaning towards China and Russia. But one thing for sure is that you know, the African countries are seeking, like I've said before, are seeking to have a level playing field. They believe that, having an opportunity to probably join BRICS, will be, joining BRICS will be an opportunity for them to probably achieve that objective. For me, I've never seen such a summit happening where, there's so much interest from countries in the global south, if I might put it like this, that are seeking interest to join, these five countries, block of countries. So for me, I believe that, the African governments believe currently, those who are attending, that they can, probably get something out of this summit. And China is a major trading partner for Africa. Who would not want to be at the table with them? That will be only trying to um, uh, um, uh, um, create issues in your own economy.
All right. So much has been talked about when it comes to the BRICS summit, the de-dollarization of their countries. They're looking to take over artificial intelligence. They're looking to be able to defeat the West and G7. Maybe not defeat them, but create an alternative of some sort. There are also talks about some protests by Amnesty International that might be happening outside the convention. We hope that we can get updates on that as the days go by. But thank you very much for joining us this morning.